how the hell is this guy talking to the other side when he talks so damn fast? Like, how could he be talking to the spirit world when he doesn't shut the F up? Well, the thing is this. The souls don't talk to me like this. They don't say, oh, Matt, I'm this person's mother. Tell them I'm okay. Matt, I'm this person's father. And by the way, can you let her know her grandfather's here? And we used to have the boat host. No, what it is quick bits of information. So if spirit talked to me the way that me and you are talking right now, it would take forever for them to describe what the hell was happening.
So my first question for you is, and it may be hard to pinpoint one thing, but what is the most profound piece of wisdom that you have ever received from spirit?
So what they tell me all the time is don't wait till you're dead. That's the one thing that the spirit world tells me every single day. And it's something that I live my life by, because on the other side, what's so amazing is that the things that hold us back here in this world don't hold our loved ones back on the other side. So for example, here in this world, we have limiting beliefs, we have anxieties, we have phobias, we have fears, we have all of these things. And so many times we say to ourselves, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm too old to do that. I'm not good enough, right? We place all of these fears and doubts in our own minds, and it stops us from living our best life. It stops us from achieving milestones, and it stops us from achieving our dreams. But what I've learned is that on the other side, the spirits do magnificent things. They realize their God-given gifts that maybe they didn't realize here in this world. And they also realize how their life could have been different if they didn't focus on the negative, if they didn't focus on so much time stressing, being worried, placing those self-doubts on themselves, because in heaven, it doesn't exist.
So what is, I don't know if you've learned this from the work that you do, but what is it that, obviously I know that when we're on earth, we have a natural fear of death. And I think that's what everything comes down to, right? Like any phobia, if you kind of like trace it to its origins, it's a fear of something happening to us in one way or another. And some people, I think, they almost associate emotional annihilation, whether it be rejection or even something bodily, like, oh, I'm afraid to do this because I might get hurt. Everything almost comes down to a death, like a death of the ego, of the identity, or of the body, right? So like, what do they say causes fears, phobias, and why do we all have different fears and phobias?
So what's interesting is if you look at a baby, right? You look at a little kid doesn't have phobias and fears when they're younger, right? Like I know that right now, Royce, he's only 9 months old and he's not afraid of anything.
That's your son.
Yes, my son, until like the other day, he was playing around and he took a little tumble off the bed. Luckily, it wasn't high up, right? But now he knows not to go over to the edge, right? He knows not to go and do that. It's how we learn. But our phobias and fears and our worries come from traumatic past experiences. And it might not be a traumatic or past experience that you personally went through, but it might be a traumatic experience that you watch somebody else go through. For example, if you watch your sister or your mom struggle with finding love, if you watch your sister go through a terrible heartbreak or a terrible relationship or an abusive relationship, you might absorb that fear and that worry, and it might prevent you from finding love in your life. And it's actually funny. I actually was doing a reading for a woman who is actually a very strong and powerful divorce attorney. And, she said to me, I don't believe in love anymore. And the reason why she didn't believe in love anymore wasn't because she went through anything bad in her life. She didn't have any past experiences, but through her client, she was also very sensitive, and to watch the people, fight through divorces, go through separation of children, go through all of those things, it left an impression on her. It left energy with her. And because of that, it caused her this fear of, oh my God, I don't want to get married. I don't want to be in a relationship because look at all the things that could go wrong. Right.
Well, that begs the question then, are we supposed to take past as, like what lessons? You said about your son, Royce. So he took a tumble, he fell, he knows not to do that again. Are we supposed to say, well, I'm never doing that again? Or are we supposed to dust ourselves off and say, I'm just going to dive right back in?
It's about being more cautious, right? So for example, he fell off the bed. He was crawling around. He took a tumble off the bed and, he got back on the bed. He wasn't afraid of getting back on the bed, but he knew not to go over to that edge again. He knew, to be careful. And now we don't have that problem, right? Well, it's the same thing with us. For example, I can tell you from my personal experience as a medium, I have seen people die in so many different ways. I have, seen people go through terrible things in their life, through certain challenges, struggles, all of these things. And in the beginning, it used to sit with me. In the beginning, I used to be like so nervous and so fearful. Oh, I can't do this because this happened with one of my clients, or, oh, I can't trust this person because this happened with this person that I was reading for, right? And then I talked to the spirit world about this because I used to get very anxious and worried. And what the spirits told me is that we all have our own destiny, right? We all have our own life that we're meant to go through, and that these are all life lessons we all learn. And that's exactly what the spirits do. We're put here on this earth to make mistakes, right? We're here to trip, to fall, right? To stumble, but it's all about how we pick ourselves up. And it's all about becoming your own success story. That's what the spirits share with me. For example, and I'm writing about this actually in my new book that I'm working on. There was this woman that I read for, and she overcame all odds. I mean, her mom and her dad were both heavy addicts here in this world. They had, a terrible issue with drugs and alcohol, and those addictions that they had actually made its way over to her brother, who had passed in the same way. She lost almost everybody in her family through these terrible addictions, to the point where she became addicted as well. But after losing all these people, she realized that she had two choices. She could either succumb to that same fate, or she could do something about it. So she said, you know what, I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to go and I'm going to make myself better. And she did. And what was amazing is that to this day, not only is she clean and sober, but she's helping, adolescents, and she's talking to the youths, and she's going to schools, and she's doing all these amazing things, helping other people not get into the same predicament as her family, and showing people that you have your own path. Don't let someone else's karma or what someone else's challenge become yours. You can make your own decisions in life. And I think that's what Spirit's trying to show us.
And is it kind of like destiny versus free will? I always look at it as your destiny are the cards that you're dealt, and your free will is how you play your hand.
Absolutely. I think it's a great way to talk about it. And I think that another way to describe it is this, right? What I know is that we are all born here in this world with certain talents, skills, and abilities, and certain things that are meant for us. The spirit world explains to me that we all have certain gifts, right? And there's all certain things, certain presents, right, that we're meant to have here in this world. For example, your soulmate is a gift, right? Your children are a gift from God. Like all these different things that you're meant to have, right, are meant for you. But let's say that you could have 3 children, right? You might choose only to have 2. You might choose only to have 1. At the end of the day, you're making your own decisions. And what I've also learned from spirits, we're not born here alone. We're born with an angel. We're born with a spirit guide. We're born with souls that watch over us. And what I've learned is that your spirit guide works with you every day, but your spirit guide is not there to stop you from making mistakes. Your spirit guide is responsible for you to meet your soulmate, for you to, meet certain people that are going to be influential in your life, both good and bad, right? But at the end of the day, you make your own decisions. Your spirit guide could introduce you to your soulmate, meaning that you can cross paths with your soulmate. And you might say, you know what? As much as this guy or this girl is really great, I'm not ready for that right now. Instead, I want to focus on work, or I want to focus on, my family, or I want to focus on other things. And that's one of the things I think that people don't understand, is that sometimes there's opportunities that come from us, but we turn them down without realizing it, or without knowing what we're doing.
Okay. And so I have an interesting question for you. Do you, as a psychic medium, have the ability to, I don't know how to explain this, to tap into your baby son's spirit guide, or his soul mission, or maybe what his kind of blueprint is before he incarnated, into this world? Do you have that ability, or is it like it's too close to home, so you're blocked from seeing anything?
So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything there is to know about death and dying, because I've never died, right? I'll only know until I get to the other side. But through the readings that I do, and through the souls that I communicate with, I'm able to piece things together, right? And I'm able to get little glimpses into heaven, and I start to pick up information here and there. Being a medium is like learning a new language. But what I will tell you is that we don't know our life mission and what our gifts are, right, until we actually transition on and go to the other side. That's when everything's, placed and put in front of us. So what do I mean by that is this. All of our journey here in life is all about discovering ourselves, discovering our true self, discovering our potential, discovering our gifts, all of those things. I think I know what my life mission is, right? I'm pretty sure my life mission is, and the reason my life purpose is being a psychic medium, helping people connect with their loved ones and showing people that there's more to life. But I won't truly know that until I die. When we pass on, is when our whole life is shown in front of us and we're like, okay, this is why we were put here on this earth. And this is why, this happened within our life.
That is frustrating.
I don't think it's frustrating. Really? I think it's amazing because we're not meant to know everything. Life wouldn't be fun if we didn't know. Like, for example, I like to think of it as this, right? Our life is like we're driving. It's almost like when you're driving on the highway at night, you can only see where your headlights show you, right? You know where the destination is, you know where you're going, but everything along the way, you can only see so far. Well, it's the same thing with us. And even when I'm doing a reading, I don't know everyone's life from start to finish. And even when I'm giving a reading for someone, right? A lot of times when souls come through, they'll only give me little bits of information to help that person along their way. But even for me, spirit's not there to help us cheat life. Like I can't just get the lottery numbers or know, like, who's going to win in the horse race or this or that. Right, They want us to do the work here in this world. That's why we're here.
But what is that concept of you come here and you get that earthly amnesia, right? That comes down. Like, why? Why?
I don't understand the question.
Yeah, why do we have to come in with that amnesia? Why aren't we able to bring all of this wealth of knowledge that our soul has accrued when we come in, when we're born?
Well, so you don't. So what's interesting is that you learn while you're here on earth, right? We don't bring information with us. We bring information with us to the other side. We don't bring information with us to this earth, to this world. That's why the spirits are more knowledgeable than we are, right? It's the reason why our loved ones on the other side have access to informations and things that we don't as humans, right? And it's the reason why a lot of times when they'll come through and they'll speak to us, especially when they talk to me about the life lessons, the things that they learned here in this world, the reason why they're so knowledgeable is that they learned it here in this world, right? That's why we're put here. We're here to learn life lessons. So when we transition on to the other side, there's something called universal knowledge. So universal knowledge is that every single thing that you do here in this world is worth something and it means something, right? Everything that you go through, you might think it's a personal thing that you're going through. For example, an addiction, a health problem, a mental problem that you're going through here in this world. You might be feeling like you're fighting it alone and that you're going through it yourself. But one day when we transition on to the other side, everything that we've learned here on earth as a soul, right, gets recorded and it's shared as a wealth of knowledge to the other side. What I mean by that is this. People will say to me all the time, well, Matt, how did my mom know this? Or how did my dad know that? For example, I was talking to this man, he was a stockbroker and he was having issues. He was starting a financial company and there was this issue in this financial company and his mom came through in spirit and started giving him like all of this advice of things that he could do and where she saw his like life was going and whatnot. And right away, he was confused. He's saying, Matt, I don't think you're connecting with my mother. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't think I'm connecting with your mother? And he says to me, well, my mother didn't know how to write a check here in this world. My mom, she knew nothing about money. She knew absolutely, nothing about finances. How could she be telling me this advice from the other side? Well, it's because of universal knowledge. In heaven, it's almost like, for example, best way to describe it is Google, right? You have a question, type it into Google, you will find the answer. You'll find more than you've even bargained for, right?
Yes.
Same thing with the other side. So in spirit, if spirit wants access to information, it's like doing a Google search, like all the information is just there.
Okay, so that brings me to something else I'm a little confused about. Everything that I've studied about the spirit realm and the soul, I've come to believe, or I've always read or heard that our soul does reincarnate over and over and over again. And we've had many lives and we bring certain gifts and our soul brings some knowledge in from previous lives. But in your book, you actually say that has not been your experience in terms of what you've learned.
Exactly. So I've never researched any of this. I have never picked up a book. I've never read about the other side. So the thing is that, when it comes to research, right? The thing is that I trust the information that I get from the spirit world, and everything that I write about, everything that I teach is off of my own personal belief system of what I've learned from all of these years giving readings. So I can't back something just because I read it in a book. I have to know and hear it firsthand from the spirit world. So I've never met a soul that was reincarnated that lived over many, many years and came through to me. That's never happened. So until that happens, I can't teach it because no one told it to me. I'd be lying to you. I can't. For me, as a medium, I can't stand behind something unless I have the facts. So throughout my whole life, even becoming a medium, I was never taught this. There is no Hogwarts like in Harry Potter where you can just go and learn to be a medium. Everything that I've learned, and I'm still learning every day, I still have a lot to learn. Everything that I've learned every single day, I've learned from the readings that I give. And I've asked the other side many questions when they've come through. What has your experience been like with dying? How do you know this information? How do you know this? How do you know that? And I've started over these years to put the pieces together. And that's how I've been writing my book. And this new book that I'm coming out with actually answers a lot of these questions as well, because my last book, We Never Die, Secrets of the Afterlife, became a New York Times bestseller same day. And I feel like it's because so many people were searching for this information, right?
Yes.
So many people were looking for
now more than ever. Yes.
Yeah. And since that book had, came out, what was it? Oh my God, I want to say a year ago, 2 years ago. I think I wrote it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I wrote it during the pandemic. So back, about two and a half years ago, 3 years ago, I started writing it. That is, I've learned so much more since that book was even published. It's a never-ending source of knowledge for me. It's almost like when we're learning a new language, right? You're constantly learning new words, new definitions, and things like that. And listen, I'm not here to knock anything or to knock anyone's belief system, right? I can only talk about my own experiences. That's just what it is.
What's been shared with you.
Exactly.
And I think another thing that people are trying to understand, and I try to piece it together myself, is that when you say you're with a sitter, which is the person that you're reading, and you say, oh, your grandmother or your grandfather is standing right beside you, or they're standing in back of you. Explain to me what that is. Are you speaking figuratively, or are you literally seeing them as clear as you're seeing me right now?
So I don't see them as clear as I see you, right? But I do see shadows and figures. I see a figure and I'll know right away that's this person's father, that's this person's father. So listen, every medium is different and every psychic has a different way of connecting with the other side. Like my grandmother used to get omens and premonitions. That's how she was a psychic medium. My mom is a card reader. She reads cards and she's a life reader. She can tell who you're going to marry, what's going to happen 5 years from now, things in your life that are going to happen. That's how my mom connects with the other side. With me, I see the departed. So how it works for me is that I will see, shadows or a figure, right? And then right away when I connect with that soul, I'll hear, okay, I'm this person's father, I'm this person's mother, and they'll start to tell me quick bits of information. So that's how it works when I'm out at a live event. So when I'm at a live event, what's really cool is that for me, it's almost like the audience disappears and all I see are figures there in the audience. This person over here, I'll see a figure and I'll be like, okay, that's this person's father. If I see, the figure of a child over here, I'll know that this person lost a son or a daughter. And it's really like going and piecing together, using all of your senses, where I'll see them, sense them, feel them, hear them. And depending on how that soul communicates, when they come through, the information is always different.
Are you seeing the outline of what looks like a human body? Or are you seeing something different than that?
I wouldn't call it really an outline. I mean, the only way I can describe it is, I would say like almost like a shadow. Like that's how I would explain it.
Okay.
Or a silhouette. Silhouette is the perfect example.
Silhouette. Now so you're getting the silhouette, plus they're telling you, I guess, telepathically, I'm this person's whatever.
I'm glad you said that, because, a lot of people don't realize, like a lot of the one things that, I try to teach people how it is, because a lot of people don't understand, right? So for example, like the number one question I get is, how the hell is this guy talking to the other side when he talks so damn fast? Like, how could he be talking to the spirit world when he doesn't shut the F up? Well, the thing is this. The souls don't talk to me like this. They don't say, oh, Matt, I'm this person's mother. Tell them I'm okay. Matt, I'm this person's father. And by the way, can you let her know her grandfather's here? And we used to have the boat host. No, what it is quick bits of information. So if spirit talked to me the way that me and you are talking right now, it would take forever for them to describe what the hell was happening, right? So they come to me really quickly. So for example, when I see that shadow or silhouette, I'll know that spirit's ready to communicate. The moment I'll connect with them, I'll ask them questions in my head. Who are you? They'll say, I'm the father. How'd you die? And then I'll start to feel things. If I feel something in my head, I know that they had a stroke or an aneurysm. If I feel something in my stomach, I know they had abdomen issues. If my heart starts to flutter, I know that they had a heart attack. If I see the image of an urn, I'll know that person was cremated. And within just a couple seconds, they can tell me a lot about their life all at once.
And their connection to their life, do they have human emotions connected to the life, or is it more like as if somebody were telling a story and it's more detached? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, it's not detached. I mean, because they are with you every day, right? They still love and care about you. But the thing is that they know things, don't forget. So for example, I think the question that you're asking me is, people say, do our loved ones get worried about us? Do they get scared? Do they get pissed when we're dating somebody and they're like, what the hell was she doing with that guy? He cheated on her 3 times. He did this, he did that, right? So I think that's what people are expecting their loved ones to say or do. But you could understand that in heaven, universal knowledge goes far beyond just doing a Google search and knowing things. Universal knowledge is that your loved ones actually know what you're thinking. And I know that sounds traumatizing, right? You're like, oh, I don't want my dad to know my thoughts. I don't want my mom to know my thoughts. Right. But really what it is that your loved ones feel closer to you and they know why you made that decision. So here in this world, we have a disconnect. We have a detachment. The souls on the other side don't. So you and your mom might get into an issue because your mom might say to you, why are you dating that guy? What do you see in him? Why do you keep going back to that relationship? Where on the other side, right, your mother in spirit would say, I know why you keep going back. I know why you keep making that decision.
They see the whole picture.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's why they don't judge, right? They don't judge for that reason.
Okay, so there's a movie that I watched a long time ago, and you'll understand the reference in a second. Have you ever seen the movie Chances Are with Robert Downey Jr. and Sybil Shepherd?
I have not, no.
All right, I'm going to give you like a little... Okay, so in that movie, Robert Downey Jr.'s character is in heaven and he's about to be born into a baby's body. And as he's making his way to go from spirit into being born, they forget to give him his shot that makes him kind of forget everything that he's supposed to forget. So he comes down with all of this knowledge, almost like with this channel open, right? Like you have. And I often think about that because it's like, I feel like people who are mediums, it's almost like you're born with this open, direct channel that the rest of us maybe have it, but it's not open. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, so it's actually the way that Spirit describes it to me is that we're all born here with an open channel, right? So all children can sense, feel, and hear the spirit world. And it's funny because people ask me about my son all the time. He's only 9 months. And they're like, does he have the gift? Does he have the gift? And I always tell people it's too early to tell because all children have the gift. So do I know that he's talking to spirit? Absolutely. I know he sees his people. I know he has his little conversations, in his head or however he connects with the other side, because all children do, right? All children before the age of 3 will have a spirit encounter. But some children will hold on to that connection in those encounters, right? Remember it, hold on to it, keep that connection strong. And some souls and children won't. So the thing is that a lot of children outgrow it, and they kind of lose that connection, or they think they lose that connection. In my experience, it's always there. We just have to learn how to tune back into it. But the majority of children, won't have that connection, or that connection won't stay with them. But for the majority of who do, and it follows them, that's where we get psychic kids from. That's where psychic children come from.
Okay. And I have a situation that happened to my son when he was very, very little that I feel like is so apropos here. When he was
how old? Do you remember how old he was?
He must have been maybe 4 months old. He was the age when you put them in the little baby bathtub. Yeah. Because you can't go into a regular bathtub. So they're in that infant bathtub. And what happened was I was downstairs because his dad was with him. But my father had pulled, my now ex-husband had pulled him aside to speak to him about something. And they got so caught up in conversation that my son was actually, unfortunately, left alone in this baby bathtub in the bathroom. I didn't know that. I was downstairs and I hear my son giggling over and over and over again. I think that his dad is like coochie-cooing, playing with him in the bathtub. I finally come upstairs and I see that my ex and my dad are in the hallway talking, but my son is sitting up in the bathtub looking at something and just giggling his brains out and splashing the water as if he's playing with somebody. And I firmly believe that one of my loved ones in heaven was babysitting him and keeping him safe because of this unfortunate incident that took place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It was the most eerie, but yet comforting feeling. But I could see that he was looking at somebody, he was giggling, and he was responding, he was interacting with somebody that wasn't there.
Well, and another way that you can tell if souls are there too, like it's not just kids, like a good telltale way to know if the spirit is with you is to look at the pets, right? I can't tell you when I do my online group readings, you would not believe how everyone's like always apologizing because the minute that, I go to read somebody, their cat or their dog or whatever animal they have in that house starts going crazy. And they're like, oh my God, I don't know why the dog's doing this. I don't know why. And I'm like, no, it's okay. Like they're seeing spirit because the truth is that animals have a different filter and different lens. And what's really cool that I've learned is that animals don't fear death and dying, right? And the reason why is because they know the other side exists. So, animals can actually see spirits, which is so cool because we as humans, obviously, unless you're gifted or you have, some mediumship ability, can't see them with the naked eye, right? And even though spirits will come to me, I know that my pets or any pet that is sees them even more clearer than I can. So they see spirits walking with us every day. So they definitely know there's another side of life with this. And I feel like that's why they don't have that fear and anxiety.
Well, and I think also because they're very much in the now, right? I mean, they don't have anticipatory anxiety. That's what it is. They don't know have it.
I think that they do in some extent. I've seen that there were animals who have come through in readings that told me that they held on because they felt like their owner, was going to be in a bad way if they passed at that exact moment or died at that exact time. So, they do have some senses that I feel like we haven't tapped into or haven't seen completely. And I've noticed that with the pet readings that I've done.
Interesting. And let's talk about when you do a reading for a celebrity, because you have celebrity clients. They are people that are very Googleable, right? Googleable. I don't know if that's a word, but there's a lot of information about them in the public domain. Is it more challenging for the departed loved ones that come through to prove to the celebrity client that it is in fact really their loved one because of that?
I think it's more challenging for the general public to believe than it is the celebrity, to be honest with you. And that's why I don't publish a lot of the celebrity readings, because the thing is that I know that, anybody can come back and say, oh, well, even if that information isn't on Google, right? Somebody who's high profile, like Mariah Carey or Britney Spears or things like that, you can Google pretty much anything about them. Right. But the thing is that, when I do a reading for a celebrity, there's things that are there that are not Googleable. There's things that are there that are, secret that oftentimes come up in a reading. And I found that with celebrities, a lot of times they have two personas, right? They have what they show in the public side and what actually happens behind closed doors.
Right.
And a lot of times I think that if you want to know what I'm talking about, right? If you see that a lot of times when you read someone's memoir, you'll say, okay, this is how they were portrayed on TV. This is what we all saw for years and years. But when the memoir comes out, we're like, oh my God, wait a minute. It wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
So to be honest with you, I got to be completely honest. When I do a celebrity reading, I don't want to know anything about that celebrity. And luckily, thank God, like I'm not somebody who, and I think the reasons why a lot of celebrities come to me is that I'm so busy every single day between the dead and the living that I have no time to watch television. The only thing that I do watch, to be honest with you, is the news, right? Or like, movies or things. But I've never been into it's actually funny because a lot of times when I'll get celebrity calls and they'll be like, oh my, like everybody will freak out. So-and-so wants to talk to you. And I'm like, who the hell's that? They're like, oh my God, you didn't know who that is. This. And I'm like, no, I don't watch television. And it's actually funny because my wife, she sometimes gets more excited than I do when certain celebrities reach out because I'll be like, do you know this person? Like, of course I know that person, because she's into pop culture and I'm just not because because of what I do.
But is there a natural skepticism? All right, buddy, you're going to have to work really hard to show me this is my mother or this is my father, or because so
not
much
at all. I'm going to be honest with you, not at all. Like it's more from the general public. Like I said, I think that when the minute you start to do a reading for a celebrity, you're automatically set up to fail by the skeptics, because no matter what you say, they're going to say, even if you can't find it online, they're going to say, well, he could have Googled that. Well, try to Google it and see if you can find it, right? But the thing is that the celebrities know, right, what's out there on television and what's not. So, for example, there's certain things even in my life that, right, if like my life is public, I'm on television, everything's out there, but there's certain things that if my loved ones told me, certain things that happen, behind the walls, I would be able to know if it was my mom, my dad, whoever it is that had passed away.
Right. And oh, speaking of television, how did you wind up on television?
I have no idea. To be honest with you, I don't know.
Oh, come on. How did that happen?
I don't know. I can't tell you when, so it's crazy. I don't know how this all began. I have no idea. People ask me all the time, like, Matt, how is it that you have this career? What did you do? And I'm like, I honestly don't know. I don't know how my book became a New York Times bestseller. I'm still trying to figure that out to this day. I am so honored and just amazed at this journey that Spirit led me on. I'm going to tell you that I started my career as an EMT. I was working at the World Trade Center in Boston. I had an amazing job. I loved the staff. I loved working there. I worked at Seaport, and it was amazing. And I got to tell you that, I started doing readings on the side, right? I was coming back into my gifts, and, I decided, what? I'm not going to keep this hidden anymore. When I sense something, when I feel something, I'm going to talk about it. So I remember at work, I would do little readings for different people, and I would do readings for my friends back, at that age, I was only 18, 19 years old. I started doing readings for my friends and whatnot. And then next thing you know, it's like word traveled quickly. All of a sudden, people were like, Matt, my aunt wants to speak to you. Matt, my neighbor wants to speak to you. And then it started getting out of control, where all of a sudden, like, people were calling my personal numbers, being like, hey, I heard that you do readings. Hey, I heard that you're a medium and I want to do this. And then next thing you know, somebody's like, if you come over the house, I'll give you $20. I'll give you $50. I'll do I'm like, all right. It was a hobby. That's all it was. And I loved using my gift in that way. I enjoyed it because to me, it wasn't work. I loved what I did. So it's crazy that all of a sudden people just started finding out about me. And then next thing you know, I got asked to be on television shows and radio shows. And, next thing you know, one day I got a call from E! Entertainment, and they were like, Matt, we want to do a show about you and your life. And then, next thing you know, Simon Schuster contacted me and said, well, have you been thinking about writing a book? And the book came out, the first book came out, the pandemic hit. I started working on my second book. The second book came, and then something amazing happened. I remember you only have 1 week to make the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm like, there's no way we're going to make this list. It's so hard to make. It's crazy. Like, you have to sell thousands and thousands of copies in just one day. And I remember that day coming, and I was so preoccupied. Actually, it was the week that our son was born, Royce. So I didn't really even have a lot of time to focus on it. I actually asked my fans, I'm like, hey, listen, I got my new book coming out. If you really want to support me, please go out and buy it. And everyone was like, okay, thank you. I will. All of a sudden, my grandmother calls me up in Maine, and my grandmother lives in the middle of nowhere in Maine, right? And she's like, hey, I went to 2 bookstores. I can't buy your book. She's like, it came out today, right? I'm like, yeah, it did. She's like, hold on, let me ask. She's like, the copies that were here, they were already sold. So I'm like, amazing. Oh, that's weird. I'm like, they probably had only a couple copies. And then my sister calls me up, and she's like, hey, I went to go and buy your book today. She's like, I wanted to support you. She's like, and my local bookstore said they already sold out. I'm like, what? And then everyone started calling me, telling me that the book was sold out. And I'm saying to myself, something's off. And I remember calling Simon & Schuster and being like, hey, did the book actually come out today? And they were like, yes, it did. I'm like, I don't know if this is right, but everyone's telling me that once, and then all of a sudden, I saw social media saying, hey, I bought the last copy at Barnes & Noble. Hey, I went to this, and it started exploding. And then next thing you know, I got an email, and it was like, Matt, congratulations, you made the New York Times. And I remember I looked at Alexa, and I just started crying. And she's like, what happened? I'm like, I made the New York Times bestseller list. And she was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. And it was just incredible. I just, to this day, it gives me goosebumps, because I feel that this was a book that I had to write. I knew I had to write it for quite some time. And what I've learned is this, right? Is that Spirit will help you. When there's something that's meant for you, they will help you achieve success. And right. I know that this wasn't just my doing. I know that, the spirits and the angels and all that were around me that led me to write this book, helped to get into the hands of the people that need it the most. And I also know that that's how the people found me. I mean, the way that people have found me and have heard about me, it's crazy, absolutely crazy. Like, one woman said to me, she came to me for a reading. I said, how'd you find out about me? She goes, I found your book in the Lost and Found. She says, and I read it. She says, and she goes, I felt a connection with you. I called you, and there it is. So, it's like all those connections, everyone that's on my Facebook page or my socials, I feel like they were led to me for a reason. And that's the reason why I'm on social media all the time, because I don't consider them followers or fans. I literally consider everybody extended family.
Community. Yeah. You were raised a Catholic, correct?
Yes.
And you still consider yourself a Catholic
Well, I consider my religion spirituality now, because I welcome all religions. Like even in my office, I have, statues of Buddha, Ganesh, all different, to me, I honor all religions here because I speak to people of all religions. And I've learned that there is no separation. In heaven is all one place, right? It doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Catholic, Muslim, doesn't matter what it is that you practice, right? Or what your religion is. We all end up in one place together. So why would I not? I felt like before, like I was so closed off. And then now that, I speak to people with all different religions, I learn something new from every religion and every person that I talk to.
I 100% agree. It's funny. I was listening to Joel Osteen's sermons from the time I was in my 20s. And I interviewed him and I said, this is going to sound really strange because I'm born and raised Jewish. I'm still Jewish, but I can't get enough of your sermons. And I even repeat the affirming thing that he says at the beginning of each sermon, which is, this is my Bible. I am what it says I am. I can do what it says I can do in Jesus' name. But I'm very much Jewish. It's just that I'll take help anywhere I can get it. And I really feel like we really should be inclusive in any wisdom traditions and any leaders that have walked this earth that have really incredible information to impart to humanity. I just feel like, why not embrace it?
Amen. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel the same way because, like I said, I love that. I love that part. And I think that it scares people when people think of, you would not believe the people who message me that say, well, because sometimes there's mixed marriages where the husband might be one religion and the wife might be a different, and they think like, oh my God, what if we don't end up together in heaven? And it's not like that at all. We do and end up with each other in heaven. There are no different heavens. It's just one. So why don't we practice that here on earth? That's how I feel, in my own personal belief system. So I welcome all religion.
Okay. Yeah. The reason I ask that is because I know that Christianity, Catholicism, that there are people that are very steadfast in their belief that you don't speak to spirits, you don't connect with the other side. That goes against Catholicism or Christianity. So I didn't know if maybe you experienced any of that discrimination early in your career or in your life.
It depends. I think it really depends on the person, to be honest with you. I really think that it does, because I'll be very honest with you. I've had priests come to me. I've had nuns come to me. And I won't tell you who they are, but I've had them come to me. I've had them get readings, right? And I remember the first time 2 nuns came to my event, I was so nervous because I thought they were going to, judge me because of, the work that I was doing, even though I do everything with God. I pray, I'm very strong in my religion. I believe in Jesus. I believe in the archangels. I believe in all of that. I pray to them every single night. So when I saw 2 nuns, I was like, oh my God, here we go. I'm like, it's going to be all over, right? And then they came up to me and I said to them, like, I'm surprised you're here. And I'm like, did you know what event you were coming to? And they said, we love what you're doing. We love the work that you're doing. We had to come. And that was refreshing to me because I realized that it wasn't a whole group, it depends on the person. And, to be honest with you, that's something that I needed to hear in the beginning of my journey, because I know that I'm not doing anything wrong, because I practice everything with God and good intentions. And, to me, prayer and religion is so important with what I do.
It's so interesting that over the last 20 years, it seems like there's just been this tidal wave of interest and open-mindedness towards this, whereas before there really wasn't. And why do you think that over the last 2 decades, and definitely over the last decade, there is just an avalanche of interest in connecting with the other side, figuring out where we go from here, what the spirit world is like? Why now?
Well, so there's a couple of different reasons. One, because back in the day, you weren't allowed to talk about it. Back in the day, I would never be talking to you right now, because they would never, ever put a psychic or a medium on television. It just wouldn't happen. We had amazing pioneers back in the day, like John Edwards and James Van Prague, who really paved the way for people like me to go and to speak out about my gifts. And they've also paved the way for other people to talk about their experiences. Yeah. So, now that we have different platforms, like social media platforms, like, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, where you can go and be your own voice. You can tell your story. You can voice out different things. people don't have to be quiet anymore, right? They can share their experiences. Back in the day, it's like people were put in a box because my grandmother couldn't talk about this. She kept this, my grandmother, when I say she was a medium, she didn't do this publicly. She kept this hidden for years and years. My own grandfather didn't even know she was a medium because she was afraid of, being ostracized. Back in the day, people would call you crazy. People would say all these different things. Where now with the help of social media and the internet, people can talk about it. And also there was a big change that happened that I've noticed where when the world changed, everyone started talking about this, and that was the pandemic. I can't tell you how the pandemic had renewed faith in so many people, because I think that when you're younger, especially being my age, right? I'm only 31, right? And going through a pandemic, obviously, I've never been through a pandemic in my lifetime, and I don't think that many people have. When you go through something like that, let's back it up a little bit. When you're young, you think death doesn't touch you, right? You think like, I'm not going to die. I still have many years. We all think we're going to live to be, 110, right? And I hope that we do. But then when you have something that happens like a pandemic and everyone's passing around you, immediately there's fear because you know that you could be the one that's passing. We all know somebody who passed in the pandemic. We all know somebody who passed around that time, right? Yes. And we all know, at that moment when we saw what was happening on television, when we heard all the heartbreaking stories of people passing, it makes us wonder, right? What if we passed? Is there another life to this? What is my mom okay? Is my grandmother who died fine? And I think that that's where it came up, where during the pandemic, I cannot tell you the tens of thousands of people who reached out to me for answers. And that's why I started writing my book, We Never Die. I wrote it for that reason, because during the pandemic, it's actually funny. I'll share with you how I got the inspiration for the book. During the pandemic, thousands of people were writing to me every single day with push button questions, right? They all asking the same thing. What happens when you die? What age are we in heaven? What happens if we lose a child? What happens if a soul doesn't go to heaven? What happens if someone passes of suicide? What happens if someone passes before they get to say goodbye? So I started writing back to all of these messages, and then they just kept coming in by the thousands. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'm not going to be able to answer all these people. Like, there's no way, like, there's not enough me to answer all these people. But they all had the same questions. So I started writing them down, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write every time that I get more than 5 people asking me this question, I'm going to write it down. And I wrote it down. So in my new book, We Never Die, that's what it was all about. It was taken from all the push button questions that people have asked me about the other side. I've asked the spirit world about, and I put it in my new book. And I feel like that's the reason why, so many people gravitated to it, because it's what they needed at that time. And it's still proven to be what they need today. So many people write to me and say, your book has helped me in so many different ways. And I'm so thankful for that. Absolutely. And now I understand why. I have it right here. Now I understand why it was written the way it was written, because it was like, here's a question that people seem to want to know. Here's the answer. And yeah, it makes perfect sense. I also try to write in the book about why I came up with that, right? Like, why is it that it's not just the answer to your question? It's not like, okay, this is what happens when you die, right? It's about, how do I know that, right? And I think a lot of people ask me that, how do you know that? So when people ask me a question, I want to teach. So when people ask me, well, how do you really know? How did you know that to be true? Well, in the book, if you notice, it's a lot of stories, and I'll always point back to a reading that taught me where I learned that information from souls that came through during various readings. So it's not just like, okay, Allison, this is what happens when you die. This is what age you are in heaven, right? And you're like, oh, well, I can either believe you or I don't have to believe you. How did you get that information, right? It's almost like when you're back in school and the teachers say to you, how did you get that, right? When you're doing a math problem or something. Show your work. Yeah. Show me your work. How did you get that? Where did you find that information, right? So I've included a lot of the stories and the readings to just show people how that information has come to me, how it was introduced to me, and how I've learned about it. So tell me about, it's pretty self-evident, but tell me about the title, We Never Die, because we frame everything in the concept of life and death. You're born, you live a life, you die. And now we're starting, because of people like you, we're starting to look at it differently. I think, who was the person, I think you mentioned his name, back in the 60s or 70s, who wrote the book, Life After Life? Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't. I know that there was John Edwards. We had John Edwards, and but I don't think he was in the 60s. I think that was too far back.
Edgar Casey?
Could be. I'm not sure. So you remember I'm only 31. So I'm not sure of too much of Edgar. I've heard the name, but I don't know too much about his work. I do know John Edwards and James Van Praagh. I know that they were pioneers like back in the 90s or so.
Explain the title, We Never Die, and why you chose that title.
So I chose the title We Never Die because there's actually two versions of us and there is an afterlife. So what happens is that here in this world, when we lose a loved one, we see death as, as permanent. And what I really want to show people that is, it's just a transition. So it wasn't just about the title, it was the cover of the book. So what I really wanted to do was kind of recreate in the cover about what actually happens when we die, because there's two versions of us. There's the physical version that you see every single day, right? And then deep inside of us, there's another version of us, and it's called our soul, and it's the energy version of us. So that's really important because your soul is the second version of you. You might be missing a finger, missing a toe here in this world. You might have issues with your hair or your teeth or whatever it may be, but your soul remains intact. So in We Never Die, I made the cover to show you what actually happens. When we pass on, we leave our physical body here, but our soul transitions on and we don't lose ourselves. Like, for example, people think to me all the time that when we die, because we're energy, we're just this, we're thin air.
Right.
But it's actually completely the opposite. When we pass on, we still have an appearance. We look like we do, just without illness, without any of the challenges that we went through in life. For example, let's say, like I said, if you lost a finger or a toe, you're put back together in heaven.
Okay. So you're, and I heard this somewhere. I don't know if this is true. Does everybody's appearance revert to that of like your chronological age right now, like a 30-year-old?
Well, it depends on what age you felt your best at, right? So some souls will come through and they were fabulous in their 80s and they're still fabulous in their 80s in the afterlife. Some souls, may have went through a hard 10 years. They may have been battling Alzheimer's or dementia. It may have changed their physical appearance. They may have been through Parkinson's for the last 15 years of their life or whatever it may be, and choose to come through at an earlier age. It's, people always say, well, you're 35, you're forever 35 in the afterlife. But it's not always that. It's not always that case. I've even seen sometimes where, for example, I was reading this woman who had lost her son, and he was 22 when he had passed away. And for 3 years, he had battled with addictions and struggles, and it changed who he was. Both his physical appearance and his internal emotions. And he came through being, the age of 17, 18 before he even, had any of those struggles or those addictions. So it all depends on you. What I like to explain to people is that there are stored in your soul, you have every version of you within your life. Just like if you were to see a baby book, there's pictures of you from when you were first born all the way up till, whoever keeps track, lives out that last picture.
Yeah.
Well, if you go back through the timeline, there's all different versions of you, right? We got if depending on how old you are, right? We have the 70s versions of you, the 80s version of you, the 90s version of you. With every single version, you might look very different, right? In the 80s, you might have had the poofed and wild hair, right? The 90s, you might have toned it down a little bit. The 2000s, you might have dressed a little bit more, punk rock or whatever it may be. I don't know, right? We all have different versions of how we looked, how we dress, body weight, image, all of these things. But more importantly, when we felt our best as well. So a lot of times you'll see this with older people. If you say to somebody, oh, you look so beautiful today, or you look so beautiful, an older person will say to you, oh, if you thought I look good now, you should have saw me. Hold on, let me grab a picture for you. Depending on the person that you're talking to, they might take their wedding picture out. They might take their high school picture out. There's a time in their life that they looked and felt their best. And in heaven, that's the age we return to, or that's the version. It's not really an age, right? It's a version of ourself that we take with us.
Yeah. And have you yourself, I don't think so, but have you yourself ever had an NDE, a near-death experience?
No, I have not. The thing is that everyone always thinks I have because, being a medium, but no, I never have had a near-death experience. I've talked to people who've had near-death experiences, but I've never had one myself.
Okay.
Thankfully, I don't think I'd want to. I'm so connected to the other side that's like, I don't need any more experience.
Yeah, I'm good. Have you had the way that people who have NDEs, they will describe, when they started the process of crossing, they will describe everything from gardens to streams to actual buildings. I mean, I'm sure you've heard your fair share of them. Have you ever been guided or given a tour, so to speak, of the other side by your spirit guides or through any of the mediumship work that you do?
Not in the experience of an NDE, like not into that depth, right? So it's funny because I talked to Dr. Oh my God, her name's not coming up, Mary O'Neill. Is that the name?
The one who was in the rafting accident. Is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So I spoke to her, and it's funny because when I was listening to her story, a lot of what she learned when she went to the other side was very comparable to what I've learned as a medium. But it was interesting to hear hers because I have an outside perspective. She had an inside perspective. So, I learned a lot with talking with her and kind of comparing notes on what we kind of knew about the afterlife when I was with her on Red Table Talk. But also what I've learned is sometimes people don't have near-death experiences. I had a friend of mine who was petrified because she was shot here in this world when a gun misfired. She coded, she was clinically dead on the table and saw nothing. And she came to me and she never talked about it. And then years later, she said to me, Matt, I got something to tell you, remember that gun misfire? And I said, yeah. And she says, I saw nothing. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, people have near-death experiences. She says, I saw black. I didn't see anything. I don't remember anything. Why is that? So I did a reading for her. And I realized that her soul never left her body. So it all depends too. Like some people go through those traumatic events, but don't see anything. It's not because they're not going to heaven. It just means that, she, at the time when she had this traumatic experience, she was young. She had a young daughter at home. Her daughter was only 11 years old. The gun misfired. She had every reason to live. And she was adamant that she was not dying. She was staying here. And, when they brought her into the operating room and they went and they started operating on her, even though she coded and she was lost, her soul never actually moved out of her body, which was interesting, which is the reason why I feel she didn't have that experience.
Wow. So did she feel conscious, but everything was black? Or was she just like when you're put out for surgery, you're just gone and then you're back and you don't know?
That's exactly what she felt from what she described to me. Yeah. It's just like she was out and then back. And then they explained to her, what had happened.
Okay. And from everything that you know, do you think that, well, a couple quick things. Do you think time travel is possible on this earth? And if so, how? And do you think that every human passes at the divine time that they were supposed to pass, or can a person actually pass prematurely?
I think that people definitely can pass prematurely. I mean, I definitely do. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I don't have any evidence of that yet. But,
Okay.
From my understanding, when I see some things, I really do think, and I shouldn't say that I see that. I think that when, in certain circumstances, when somebody takes their life, it's premature, because I've had souls come through to me and say that they regretted it. So I have to take that back. I have had those readings where souls have come through who had taken their life and realized, oh my God, I shouldn't have done this because I could have done this, and this. And they saw that there was so much more to their life that they could have had, but they ended it early. And that's what's tough, right? And I think that's what spirit tries to show us, is that when we're here in this world, it's tough because when you're going through a challenge, like a divorce, a health struggle, a mental struggle, whether it be anxiety, past pain, panic, whatever it may be, when you're going through it, you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what's so hard. And you feel like, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to make it through this? But your loved ones in spirit, don't worry, because they know that you will. And that's one of the things that I think that we need to do a better job of as humans, is that, not stressing so much, putting our faith into the side and knowing that, listen, this too shall pass.
Do you feel that you have mastered, I guess, what you'd call manifesting or the law of attraction because of all the knowledge that you have? Or do you struggle like the average person, kind of stumbling around in the dark?
Well, I don't feel like I stumble on the dark, luckily, because I do listen, but there's sometimes I don't listen to spirits. Sometimes spirits will come through and tell me, don't do this, or this won't work out, whatever I do, but I'll do it anyway, because I'm human. So for example, the thing is that people say to me, oh my God, Matt, you're being a psychic medium, like you must always have the right answer. And the truth is no, I don't. Right. And then the other times is sometimes I do get the right answers, but I won't try. I have to learn it for myself. For example, your mother can tell you, don't date that guy. He doesn't love you. He's not there for you. This is going to end in heartbreak. And you might know that that's true in your heart, but you still have to test it for yourself.
You're still compelled to do it. Yeah.
For example, people come to me, for readings, right? And sometimes spirits will give them advice. They'll give them advice to help them about a certain person that they're dating, certain person that they're with, whatever it may be. And they choose not to take spirit's advice. It used to get me so mad back in the day, right? And then I realized, how can I judge these people? I don't listen myself. There's many times when I'll go to do something, whether it be a business decision or a personal decision, and the souls will say, oh, think twice, don't do that, whatever it may be. This isn't going to work out. But yeah, I'll have to prove it to myself. And then, I'll hear, okay, I should have listened. But here on earth, sometimes we have to make those mistakes. We have to learn ourselves.
Yeah, it's part of it. And being that time is not linear outside of the three-dimensional physical world, do you think here on earth, do you think that time travel would ever be possible or no?
So I believe in everything and nothing, right? So to be honest with you, I think anything's possible. Anything's possible. And I actually think about that a lot. I mean, I'm sure that there's got to be a way, right?
I think so, but I'm a time travel nerd. I don't know why. I mean, like Back to the Future is my favorite movie.
I don't know too much about it. But I can tell you this, right? I can tell you that souls can absolutely travel back in time. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Like to see things,
Yeah.
that is. But I'm going to tell you something right now. I never thought this would be possible. I remember being a little kid, right? And watching like those futuristic movies like Xenon, Girl of the 21st Century on Disney, where they would use the tablets to talk to one another.
Yes.
And I think to myself, oh my God, that'd be so cool. Imagine if you could do that. And I thought it was the shit when the first color flip phone came out, never mind. Did I ever think that video chatting would be possible? Absolutely not. When that first came out, it blew our minds, and now it's part of our everyday life. So, do I think that it could happen? Absolutely.
And can you reveal the name of your new book that's coming out?
I can't, not yet. If I could tell you, I would definitely let you. I'm almost done. I'm on chapter 8 right now. But once it's all done, I definitely let you know.
Will it have a very different theme, or is it more of a continuation? Almost like
it's going to have a different theme. It's going to have one theme that everybody has asked me about since this last book.
Perfect. Okay. And any more, is Meet the Frasers still going on?
So Meet the Frasers ended with the pandemic, sadly, because we couldn't film. It was so sad. We were all getting ready for season 2, and then the pandemic hit and everything had happened. But what we did do is that we did have a continuation of it for a short moment, because everybody was asking, well, what happened since the pandemic? What's going on? So we were very lucky to partner with Studio 71 and bring a Facebook Watch special when Facebook Watch was here, called The Frasers Plus One, which takes you all through basically the pandemic up until the birth of our son, Royce.
Oh, very cool. And any more TV projects for you?
Always. There's always TV projects in the works, luckily, and I just been, between touring, between the book writing, between, filming for different TV things, it's been a journey. But, the thing is, I took some time away for a little while because I wanted to spend time with my family and with Royce. And, I think the pandemic was personally what I needed for a little bit, just to go and to relax and to get back in the zone. And now I'm ready to get back out there. So I'm really excited.
Makes sense. Well, Matt, I want to thank you so much. I know I peppered you with so many questions because I find what you do, the work that you do, so fascinating, and I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me on. It was great connecting with you.
Of course. All right. Take care.
All right. Thank you.